The NBA trade deadline is almost here. Are the Sacramento Kings done making moves?
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. I am James Hammond, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320, the Kings Beat, and of course, your new host of Locked On Kings. Welcome in. I am a credentialed media member that has covered the Sacramento Kings for the last 16 seasons. I'm at every single home game. I have to take that burden upon myself so you don't have to. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Also, Locked On Kings is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. All right, let's dive right into this thing. We've got the NBA trade deadline madness. We have, this question about what will a Dylan Cardwell extension look like if he is in fact going to get a contract upgrade from his two-way contract. And then, of course, we're going to start with more murmurs. There are more murmurs about a potential Domantas Sabonis trade to the Raptors, and that is a really, really, really good place to start. According to Jake Fisher in his latest update on the Mark Stein newsletter, again, highly recommend. Mark Stein stuff is great. Jake Fisher there, it has been absolutely tremendous. You can find him on Substack. But according to Fisher, this is what he writes. My sense is that Ellis being off the table shouldn't have any real impact on Sabonis talks. And B, Toronto will continue to explore options for an infusion of size. As we've reported many times, they have shown interest in Sabonis for some time. Okay, so this is what I know of this situation. We'll just start with the Keon Ellis part. Keon Ellis is now a Cleveland Cavalier. Shout out to Keon. He actually put a really, really nice goodbye out on Instagram if you want to go read it. Good stuff. He's a good young kid who's just trying to figure out his way in the NBA and get that first big contract. So hopefully that's what happens for him in his latest stop. But everything I know, and this is from a very good source, that Keon Ellis was never part of any conversation with the Toronto Raptors, not part of a sweetener deal, not part of anything. And part of the reason for that is that pulling off a Domantas Sabonis to Toronto deal by itself is incredibly difficult. Adding in another player like Keon Ellis would make it untenable. And so that's where the Kings are at. I mean, they're trying to work, around the clock to figure out ways to improve their roster or at least improve their financial stability moving forward. Again, they took on some contract with the DeAndre Hunter trade that they just pulled off with Keon Ellis and, Dennis Schroeder going to the Cavs and Dario Saric heading to the Bulls. But that trade in itself added an additional $1.5 million in salary for this season and an additional $10 million for next season. So the Kings are going to be a tax-paying team next season if they're not very careful. They also are dancing along the tax line right now and are in pretty dire straits. They're within $1 million of the tax from what I've been able to formulate. And that's not a good place to be, especially when we get to this Dylan Cardwell contract, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes. Some of the things that we do know. Okay, so number one, Ellis is never part of the deal. Number two, the Kings have refused to take back Jakob Poeltl and Emmanuel Quickly. Quickly has a 3-year deal remaining after this year at $32.5 million each year, 32.5, 32.5, 32.5. Poeltl is it's a wild contract. It's $19.5 million next year. Then it goes up to 27, 29, and 27. And he's a almost 31-year-old player who all of a sudden at 7'1" is having back issues and has not been able to play, which is why they're out there looking for players. I'll say this though, just go back to the history of the trade deadline. And remember, every time that you think that Toronto is not going to do something at the deadline, or there's not any murmurs of them doing anything, they actually go out and swing for the fences. This is a team, of course, it's different management. Usai Majuri is gone. So at some point, you got to figure out if this group is going to do similar things. But you kind of get the feeling that Toronto's pushing here. So if we're gonna, again, from my sourcing, from what Jake Fisher said, Sam Amick has added into this as well. There's all kinds of reporting on the Domas situation, but from what I've heard right now, it sounded like over the weekend that they were trying to work out a 3-for-1 trade or a 4-for-1 trade, where the Kings, number one, needed to clear up a couple of roster spots, which they did in this trade with Keon Ellis and Dario Saric and Dennis Schroeder going out. They did their own 3-for-1 just the opposite way. So if the Kings are going to do a 3-for-1, they can do that straight up and take back two additional contracts. But if it's a 4-for-1, which pretty much has to be if the Kings aren't going to take back one of those bigger contracts, then either the Kings or the Cavs are going to need to find a third team and dump a salary onto that team. That might cost something. Again, I think one of the more interesting things is to look at the books for Toronto. They owe a couple of second-round picks over the 7 years that they have their picks, but they don't have any outgoing first. So pretty crazy for a team that is, has made some major moves over the last couple of years. Their team that went out and got, RJ Barrett, they went out and got Brandon Ingram, but the fact that they don't have any outstanding picks is pretty crazy. And if I'm the Kings, that's where I'm starting. If you're going to move on from Domantas Sabonis, who's clearly the best player in this trade, no matter who is involved from the Toronto side, and we'll get into that in a sec, the Kings are probably going to need something. They're going to need something. And I don't know if that's a first-round pick, if that's 2 first-round picks. I don't know what they're asking for, to be honest with you. But what I do know is, like, the centerpiece to any deal with Toronto is going to be, again, centered around RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett, the third pick in the 2019 NBA draft. Scott Perry selected him when he was with the New York Knicks. And so there are ties here. I believe that RJ Barrett is currently playing on a contract extension that Scott Perry had signed him to. Again, it's like $27 million this year, $28 million next year. He's a 25-year-old player. And like, we'll get into this a little bit later, but it sure does seem like the Kings, with the DeAndre Hunter trade, might be looking to reset the roster, not rebuild the roster. And if they're going to do that with 25, 26-year-olds, 27, 28-year-olds, and then their young group that they have, and then a high first-round pick this coming year, that might actually make some sense. But you do still have, like, the bloated contracts of Zach LaVine that you're going to have to pay next year, $49 million. Again, if Domas is gone in this trade, you have to figure out what you're going to do with DeMar DeRozan. And then you might get to a point where, again, it's kind of Malik Monk would be the only bigger contract that you have outside of these new players that you're bringing in, the RJ Barretts, DeAndre Hunters. So in addition, if they are going to do like this 3-for-1, 4-for-1, again, you're probably looking at a Baji's $6.4 million expiring contract. Grady Dick is owed $5 million this year, $7.1 million next year, and then he becomes a restricted free agent. Still a young player, a player that sort of fits that player age arc that we're talking about. On top of that, I think the Kings would probably ask for, but probably not get, Colin Murray Boyles, who was the 9th pick in this last year's draft. He's a 20-year-old. He is definitely a Scott Perry type of player. We're talking about a 6'7", like, super athlete, super defender, that is a ton of fun to watch, just like a problem maker for most teams. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We're going to have to see if a deal actually happens. And in order for a deal to happen, I do believe as we get closer and closer to the deadline here, Toronto's probably going to have to put all of their cards on the table and say, okay, how do we get this done? And again, if they need to ship Garrett Temple or a Abaji to the Brooklyn Nets and throw in a second round pick, that might be something that happens here, but I don't think the Kings are going to give draft capital in this trade. You never know. We learned that the hard way the other night with the Keon Ellis trade. All of a sudden, the Kings did send out a second-round pick, even if it wasn't a very good one. All right, we're going to step aside, and when we come back, we're going to dive into this Dylan Cardwell situation because it's actually kind of unique and kind of interesting. I hope I don't bore you with salary cap stuff, but we're going to give it a go. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding the underdog, or building one last same game parlay, this is a game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit fanduel.com to get started. We're also brought to you by Indeed. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listings to the people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, and locations. It saves time because you're spending less energy sorting through mismatches, and the sponsored jobs your posts get seen by candidates who actually fit. And here's where stats say it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes and Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners to this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. All right, the NBA trade deadline is basically here, and we want to give you a free month of our new Everydayer Club to help you get ready. If you need a group chat to keep up with all the chaos, join ours. The Everydayer Club gets you access to a group chat on Discord just for Kings fans, plus national chats where you can hang out with fans across the league. You also get ad-free versions of this show, and if you sign up by the trade deadline on February 5th, you can use the code DEADLINE, DEADLINE, to get your first month free. Tap the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, let's get to Dylan Cardwell. The Dylan Cardwell situation, again, is very unique. Dylan Cardwell, undrafted free agent. And I think we can kind of go back to the way that the Kings handled the Keon Ellis situation and how they could have handled things differently. They now have this opportunity here to do just that. Dylan Cardwell is playing on a two-way contract. Two-way contracts are a absolute blessing for the NBA. I think that, to be honest, they're one of the best things that the league has done in the last decade. The ability to have young players who aren't quite ready for the league or who don't quite make the cut on draft night be able to get signed to make half of a NBA league minimum contract for a rookie scale. So if a rookie scale is 1.2 million, these guys make around 600,000. That contract, the cool thing is it doesn't count against the salary cap at all. It's just bonus player for your team, and you get 3 of them. Now, again, I think that the league they can even improve this, right? We have the two-way contract for younger players. You can only use a two-way contract in your first 4 years after being drafted, and that's, I believe, a new thing. It used to be 3 years, and we have basically the Harry Giles like exception, where Harry Giles was granted another year of eligibility as a two-way player because of a season-ending injury, both when he was in Sacramento and then again he hurt himself in the G League playing for, I think it was the Lakers G League affiliate. Anyway, Dylan Cardwell has like he's been like a pot of gold for the Sacramento Kings, and it's, to be honest with you, it's made this season a lot more tenable to watch. You know, if you're looking at the development of Nick Clifford and Max Reynaud, but also Dylan Cardwell, you're hoping that you might hit on one of these guys, and it feels like the Kings, at least in the short term, have hit on all three, and that's a cool thing. To be honest with you, I think Dylan Cardwell is going to be in the league for a decade or more. One of the downfalls to being, in Dylan Cardwell's situation is that he spent 6 years in college and he came into the league as a 23-year-old going on 24. He's already 24 years old. I mean, I hate saying this. He's older than Jonathan Kuminga, who's been in the league for like 6 years, 5 years. So, like Dylan Cardwell as a first-year player, it's really cool that he's found his niche. He's understanding the game. He's gone from a player who averaged 5 points and 5 rebounds at the college level to a player who's going to easily do that at the NBA level, even as a rookie. His rebounding numbers have been great. His defensive numbers are off the charts. You go out there and find these graphics that people are putting out there about, guys who defend the rim and all that stuff. And Dylan Cardwell is like such an outlier. It's crazy. The Kings really did find something here. I've compared him to Ben Wallace. I think there are other players he compares favorably to as well. I kind of want to see if he can develop a jumper, kind of want to see if he can develop at least one or two small post moves. But for right now, he's doing an excellent job. He's bringing energy, excitement, physicality, all that stuff. So let's get into the contract. Um, Everything we heard when the Keon Ellis trade went down is that the Kings freed up 2 roster spots, and that one of those roster spots post trade deadline is likely going to Dylan Cardwell. Now, like, a lot can happen between now and Thursday, and that's what the Kings hope to do right now. They hope to extend some sort of contract to Dylan Cardwell and keep him in the family for a long time, right? But I'd also like caution people, because if the Kings do have to pull off some trade where they have 3 players coming in and 1 going out, now they're going to eat up those roster spots. Then it becomes a little more difficult. Now it's, do you waive one of those players that you just acquired? Do you waive a Doug McDermott? Do you waive again a Drew Eubanks? Like, all of these things are possible. But I'll say this: like, everything I hear coming out of the Kings right now is, as soon as we get past the NBA trade deadline, probably get into the All-Star break, the Kings are going to make a move here and actually lock him up to a long-term deal. So what is that going to look like? And I think that there's something that happened during this season that kind of went unnoticed. And that is, when the Kings went to acquire Dennis Schroeder in the sign and trade, they had 2 options. The first option was to use their mid-level exception. And basically that's what Schroeder's contract is based off of, the mid-level. But instead of using the mid-level at the last second, they used a trade exception that they had from the Kevin Huerter signing. From the Kevin Huerter trade, excuse me, when Kevin Huerter was part of the trade that sent De'Aaron Fox to San Antonio and Zach LaVine to Sacramento. Kevin Huerter got shipped along with Zach Collins to the Bulls, right? And the cool thing about preserving your mid-level exception is it's the most versatile of all the exceptions. Number one, it can go for 4 years. Number two, it can be split up into multiple exceptions, multiple players you can use it for. And number three, you can actually acquire a player via trade now using the mid-level, which is new over the last, I think, 2 seasons. But here's where Dylan Cardwell comes in. Normally with a rookie, with a free agent signing like this, the maximum you can sign a player to just as like a entry level contract is 2 years. The league created this second round player exception that now you can extend a 3 or 4 year contract to second year players, right? And that's a big deal for some of these guys. So Max Reynaud is actually playing on that exception. He signed a 3 year deal. When he gets done with his 3 years, the Kings will have his restricted free agent rights because he's been on the team for 3 years. They'll also have his bird rights and all that stuff. Okay, so here's where Cardwell and that mid-level exception come in. Because they have the mid-level, they can now use a portion of the mid-level to extend out a 3 or 4 year contract for Dylan Cardwell. So again, you start at a league minimum of 1.2, it goes up to 2.1, then 2.8 or 2.7 million. And then, these last 2 years, if you're doing a 4 year deal, the last 2 years would be team options. When he's done with all of that, number one, he would be almost 27, 28 years old. So you're getting him on a very, very inexpensive rate all the way through a good portion of his prime. But also on top of that, you still have his bird rights. You still have restricted free agency. He can be your player all the way through, his prime without any question. So it's a blessing and a curse to walk into the league at 24. The Kings are getting a fully matured player. And Dylan Cardwell, if they work this contract the right way, might actually get like a 3 year, 4 year deal, and we can avoid this weirdness that's happened with Keon Ellis. So we're going to step aside. When we come back, man, the NBA is going crazy. There are so many things happening right now with the trade deadline looming, and it's just getting weirder and weirder, and we're going to talk about some of that. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever just to hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by trusted local experts start to finish without the stress of guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work to get you every single deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file your tax return last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and give back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, we're back. The latest trade deadline madness is just bonkers. Hold on to your hats, people. It's going to get crazy. For me, I wear these really cool hats that I get from Bart Bridge. If you don't know Bart Bridge, you should probably look them up. Pretty cool. But the rest of the people out there who don't have hats, you're going to want to hold on to your hat. We have this report tonight from Chris Mannix. James Harden wants out of the LA, out of the Clippers, like ASAP. He wants out now. I actually heard this earlier in the day. I don't cover the Clippers. I'm not going to dive into the entirety of what I've heard, but let's just say that James Harden has reasons for wanting out of LA. The All-Star break is probably going to be pretty crazy. The post-All-Star break is going to be even more crazy. And James Harden doesn't want to be a part of it, even though the Clippers seem to be playing extremely well and getting right back into it in the Western Conference. So that was tonight's news. There's a rumor that the Clippers and the Cavs are discussing a trade. And that trade would be for Darius Garland. To be honest with you, I don't understand why the Kings aren't getting involved with the Darius Garland sweepstakes. This is a player that the Kings like. I know that to be true. It's a player that they have had conversations with in the past, especially internally, whether or not they're going to chase him. He's been on, the short list of point guards that around the league could have become available this year, which we're looking at, John Morant, and we're looking at Trae Young, which already happened. We're looking at guys like LaMelo Ball. which does not seem like he's going to be part of anything now that all of a sudden that team is playing much better. But Darius Garland is a guy that the Kings kind of looked at and will probably look at again if he doesn't get traded right now in a swap for James Harden. So again, if I'm the Kings, I'm calling the Cavs back and saying, "Hey, man, we just had this conversation. We just pulled off a trade. Like, can we pull off another trade? I don't know if you want to have, Sacramento Kings, uh, or the Cleveland Kings, I guess is what we would call them, where all of a sudden they have Dennis Schroeder and they have, Keon Ellis and they have Zach LaVine. But to be honest, I like Zach LaVine is probably a better fit alongside Donovan Mitchell than James Harden would be. Who knows? Who knows? All I know is that this is going to get weird and it's going to get crazy, and be prepared for what's next, because I think you're going to hear about it. Um, Also, we have the Bucks and the Warriors working on a Giannis trade, and one day we're hearing that, oh, the Bucks are really, really intrigued. I think it was Brett Siegel said the Bucks are intrigued, and they have not yet turned down the Warriors' offer of 4 first-round picks, and then I think it's Draymond Green and a bunch of other players that have to be packaged up to go for Giannis. And then all of a sudden we start hearing new reports tonight that Giannis might not be all that happy about going to a team like the Warriors, where he's going to have to play second fiddle to Steph Curry. I think that's a little strange. These guys do have a good relationship, and um, I have a hard time believing that this wouldn't be a spot that he'd want to go to. But I also look at like the long-term future of Golden State, and number one, it's not going to be that long before you would be the headliner, and Steph would either be a secondary player or retired. So that's one issue. I would also say that the Warriors are a team that puts money into everything they do, so they're going to get additional players. And so again, why does this matter for the Sacramento Kings? First and foremost, the Giannis situation is holding up a ton of stuff in the league. I think, if you look around and you see who might be involved in the Giannis sweepstakes, whether it's the Miami Heat, whether it could be, again, the New York Knicks pop back up and say, hey, maybe we do want to get in on this. The Minnesota Timberwolves, I can draw like direct links to almost every one of those teams for you. The Minnesota Timberwolves have been looking at possibly going after Malik Monk and adding him to their backcourt. That's probably not going to happen because they're looking at Giannis. Again, the Milwaukee Bucks, they were looking at both Malik Monk and Zach LaVine. That's probably not going to happen. They're not going to be pulling in extra salary. The Miami Heat, that's another team that, this summer we heard rumors that they were really interested in DeMar DeRozan. It's probably not going to happen. They're probably going to reserve their contracts for a run at a player like Giannis. So I do think that the league is kind of in a weird spot here, and you can work within the peripheral, and the Kings might be able to pull off a deal where they send Domantas Sabonis to Toronto. That's something that could happen. Um, but that's because Toronto isn't really in on the Giannis sweepstakes. And you might be able to move um, let's say, if it's Zach LaVine for in some sort of package for John Morant, that might actually be something you could still do. But there's also going to be limitations on third teams and all of the other things that happen during the trade deadline that make things extremely difficult. So keep tuning in, because this is crazy. It's wild because it's big name players everywhere. And you kind of want the Kings to be involved. You kind of want to see if they can reset their roster back to 25, 26 years old, maybe a little younger, still, have the ability to go out and add an incredible player in the draft and all that. So like there's a lot of good here that can happen from the Kings, but the rest of the league has to kind of work with them. And I'm not sure that that's going to happen because of all this other craziness. Okay, so thanks for tuning in tonight. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, all of that stuff, rating and review. Jump in the comment section. The comments have been great. I love it. All kinds of good stuff happening there. Lastly, join our Everydayer Club. So if you never miss an episode, it's time to make it official. Join the Locked On Everydayer Club and get ad-free audio, access to our members-only Discord, and more. all built for our most loyal fans. You can go to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayerclub. You can also go to lockedonkings.supercast.com. You can also go down into the show notes and click the button and join the Everydayer Club. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.